Hi my friends, we are starting a new video series where we will examine the concept of object-oriented programming. In Python, object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm that uses objects and classes in programming. The main concept of it is to bind the data and functions that work on that together, and it allows us to logically group the data and functions in a way which is easy to reuse and control. Just before I start, there are two terms I want to mention, which are method and attribute. A method is simply a function which belongs to a class, and an attribute is a class variable in the simplest definition. Now I will try to go through a scenario, and it will help us to establish the logic. Let's say we work at Chevy company that needs an application for car production. So we will try to do it using Python object-oriented programming. Let's get started without wasting any time. First of all, I specify that we will define a class by typing class, and then you can give it a name about what you are going to do. In our scenario, I write car. You don't need to put extra space here, and then we put a colon, and for now I'm just writing pass. It is just an empty class with no attributes and no methods. I have something to explain right now. A class is basically a pattern, and everything I create using the class becomes an instance of this class. You will understand better with examples. I am going to declare a variable, let's say car1, and I write the name of the class, and I put parentheses. The variable car1 is an instance of this class, and we can consider it as an empty instance. There is nothing in it. Neither the brand nor the model of the car is certain. This is just an empty instance of a car, and if we think more concretely, we can say that this car1 represents the aluminium which will transform a car later. So let's create one more instance. I will just copy it, and let's write car2, and I'm just going to print both of them, and let's see what they have. Let's say car1 instance. I'm going to print car2 instance. Let's run it. I want to draw your attention to the terminal. They are both car objects, and they both have different places in memory. So what if we want to create an instance variable, in other words, attributes for my instance? How can we do it? By attributes, I mean we can assign a variable to this instance, and we can use it whenever we want. The attribute that we assign to each instance will be specific to that instance, and it will definitely not affect other instances. Let's start setting some attributes for these car instances. I write the instance name, in our case car_1, and then I specify the name of the attribute I want to assign to the instance, and then I set it to a variable. Let me show you again. We just write a car instance, the name of the instance I mean, and then we put a dot here, and then I'm going to write model, because I want to assign the model attribute to car1 instance. So let's write something, I don't know, Camaro, and I also want to assign the color attribute, let's say black. As the last attribute, I also want to assign the kilowatts, I don't know, let's say 100. If you don't know what kilowatts are, this is the value used to calculate horsepower. Okay, our car1 instance is ready now and it has some attributes. Now let's create the second instance with different values. I will do it quickly. I'll just copy and paste it here. I will change something. Let's say Impala, and the color is red, and the kilowatts, let's say 120. Okay, as you can see, our instances now have attributes that are unique to them. So if I print the instance, I will not see anything except the location in memory. I will get the same result here. Let me show you. Okay, we got the same result. However, I can access the attributes that I had determined through this instance. For example, if I write, I don't know, model, and then let's print it, so I can access the model value of that instance, which is great. We can also do the same for car2. I will run it again. Okay, we got the result that we want. You know guys, there are some attributes we specified here, and these are the things we need when creating an instance, a car instance I mean. If we determine these things while creating this instance, instead of manually writing them one by one, we will follow a more accurate way because no one wants to deal with them one by one as we did here. To make this automatically, we need a method. So let's go back to our class here. I will make it bigger, just delete the pass here. We need a special method that will work at the initialization of that class, which is init. So we just need to write def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and we need to put parentheses. While creating an instance from this class, I mean while it is initialized, some attributes will be expected from us like model, color, kilowatts, and we need to pass them, and then this instance will be created. If you ever watch any object-oriented programming in Python, I'm sure you saw something called self here, and I'm sure it made you confused. It is actually very simple to understand what the self is here. What we did here, we created an instance and assigned a attribute to this class, right? We are going to do the same thing here. The self represents an instance of this class, like it represents like car1, car2, as we created here. Since we are not working on a specific instance in the class, we don't give a specific name, and we use the generally accepted keyword, which is self. It doesn't have to be self actually. You can also write, I don't know, instance here or some other names. This instance represents the car1, car2. So if we create one more instance like that, let me show you, like car3, then it will represent the car3. You will be more familiar in the next few minutes, so don't worry. Within the init method, so you may wonder what we are going to do within the init method here. We are going to do the same things as we did here inside the init method. So for example, we are going to write instance dot model, because we did the same thing here. We write the instance and then we assigned an attribute to this instance. So we are going to do the same thing. Instance dot model, and it is equal to what? Let me make it clearer. What we said, the init method will be triggered when creating an instance. So this init function can take parameters. For example, we can take the model here or color and the kilowatts, and then we get the value here and assign it to this instance. You will understand better, just keep watching. And then we are writing instance.color as we did here. We are doing the same thing. Then we assign it to color, and I'm going to write kilowatts, and it will be equal to kilowatts, and that's it. When we want to create an instance of this class, we will have to pass the values of these attributes, and our instance will be created accordingly. By the way, I want to underline that the name of the parameters here can be anything. It doesn't need to be model, color, and kilowatts. I mean, it doesn't to be the same like we write here. We can change in, like, I don't know, model of car, and something like that. It is totally up to you. But the developers usually give the same name as they define here. So, but as I said, it is totally up to you. And now the class is ready, and let's see how to create our instances. Instead of adding attributes one by one as we did here, all we have to do is to write the class name and put parentheses. So let me show you. Inside the parentheses, we already did here. For example, it expects some parameters here. I'm going to write model here. It may confuse us. Look, it expects some parameters here. All I need to do is to pass the values in order. And I'm going to pass the color here, and the last parameter, kilowatts, and I'm going to delete this. I will do the same for the second car. And I'm going to delete it. I'm not going to write anything for the third car instance, and that's all. When I run it, the init method will be triggered automatically, and the parameters I wrote here will be assigned to these variables. So let's run it. Look at the terminal. We got the same result, and I can easily access all the attributes that I want. For example, I want to access the color of car 1. All I need to do is to write color here. So let's run it. It is black, and it didn't affect the other instances. If we want to perform some process, that's it. If we want to write some methods ourselves, by the way, I mean functions, but when we write functions in a class, we call them methods. Look, I mean, actually, we know the kilowatts information, and we can use that to calculate the horsepower. In order to do this, we can get the formula on the internet. Look, this is the formula. To convert from kilowatts to horsepower, multiply by 1.341. So I just need this value to calculate the horsepower. And I go back to the editor. I can calculate the horsepower in this way. Let me show you. Kilowatts, and multiply it with this value. I will do the same. Kilowatts, and I'm going to print it. Okay, look at the terminal. These are the horsepower values. We were able to calculate the horsepower outside the class, but that's not a nice way, to be honest. So we can do it by writing a method in the class and calling that method over the instance. So let's see what I mean. I go back to the class, and I'm going to write a new method. First of all, I write def, and then I give a name to my method, and it will take the instance as a first parameter. Let me show you what I mean. For example, let's say calculate horsepower. The first parameter of the method is always the instance itself. All I need to do is just write a parameter here, and it will represent the instance. As I said, it can be instance or it can be anything. This anything will be the instance itself. That's the point here. So we name it as instance. So I will go through it in that way. Just write instance again, and just access the kilowatts like here. This is the instance itself, and then we access the kilowatts over the instance. So we already have the instance. Now we can access the kilowatts in the same way. All I need to do is instance.kilowatts. It is the same thing actually. Sorry, this and this the same thing. So all I need to do is just to multiply it with that value, and then I need to return it. That's all. And from now on, I don't need to do the calculation here. I just need to call this method here. So I just need to write car1 dot calculate horsepower. Now I will do the same for the second instance. I will run it. Look, I got the same result. You may be wondering what happens if we call this function without passing instance. What will happen? So let's say I will delete it, and I'm going to run it again. We got an error. The calculate horsepower takes 0 positional argument, but 1 was given. You might be confused because we didn't pass any arguments here. What happens in the background is that when we call a method over the instance like that, it passes itself to this method. So we don't need to pass it like that. Actually, it will be so ugly to writing something like that. An instance. It will be really ugly. And if I run it, we will get an error. But if I accept one more argument here, so let's say something, and then I can pass something, I don't know, something. And then I got an error because I forgot to pass something for the second instance, something 2. And if I run it, I didn't get an error. Because what I said, the first parameter is always the instance itself. So don't forget that. I'm going to clean what I did here. I hope you understand the logic, but in order not to get lost in other codes written by Python developers, I'm not going to leave it as instance here, because most people use self as the first parameter. I mean, to represent the instance itself, they use self. So I will do the same. Then we are not going to get lost when we read other people's codes. I save it. If we run it again, there is no problem. Just before finish the video, I want to show you another way to call a method. I'm not going to use them for now. I write the name of the class and then the method that I want to call. Look at here. This method asks us for an instance. By instance, we mean an instance created from the car class. Even if we write some values like we did here, I want to copy it and paste it here. If I run it, we got an error because this method wants an instance of this class. But if I delete it and pass the car1, which is an instance, we forgot to print it, so let's print it. But we didn't get an error, as you can see. I printed it and we got the result. I will end the video here. I hope it was helpful. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.